Hello and welcome everybody to today's Criterion Learning Series. We are going to be covering compensation management today. I do want to remind everybody that we do have a chat and a Q&A that you can use, and we're monitoring if you have any questions along the way. And please feel free to use those whenever you need to ask those questions. I'll try to monitor them. We do have somebody else monitoring them too, so we'll try to get back to them. And if we have time at the end, I'll revisit some of those questions so we can share those with others who might have missed the question or would like to see the answers to those questions. So let me go ahead and switch over to my browser now, and we'll be able to see what compensation management looks like in the system. Right, one moment. Here we go. Okay, so you should be able to see my self-service here, and we're going to do some of this in self-service, but of course, as always, there's setup things that need to be done first. So let's look at those setup things that we have to do on the admin side before we can start using the compensation distribution here in self-service. So I already have my settings open here. So I've done a little bit of pre-work in here. So the very first thing that we need to do is to set up a workflow for this, because the workflow is a requirement when we're doing compensation distribution. So we're going to go down to workflows under your system configuration. You'll see I already have one configured called compensation distribution, and you can have as many of these as you need to handle various groups and things like that. So just to give you a taste of what this looks like here, of course, the name, if you just have one, you could do like I did and use the same thing as the workflow type. But if it is for maybe different departments, you may want to include that information in the name there. The only module where this is applicable is in self-service. We do the setup, of course, over here, but this is where it actually gets performed. So the module is going to be self-service. And then, of course, which group does it apply to? You may have different groups for whatever they are, different locations, departments, job types, etc. All right, so of course, it does need to be active to be used. So we want to make sure that it is active. And it's obviously up to you if you're going to have multiple approvals, if you choose a certain position or employees or things like that. And then the confirmation text, which would allow you to collect signatures. If you would like to have something besides the generic confirmation, you can put something in there. I do like to point out that as soon as you start typing in here, you'll notice that we have this box that says require signature. So this would enable that e-signature if you want to do that. So I agree with the compensation submitted above, something like that, whatever you may want to say in your message. Okay, and then you might require a signature. We'll go down here, you'll see the initiator. This is going to be the person who's actually performing it in self-service, so you don't need to say who that is. And then one or more people may be involved in the verification or the approval. In my situation, it's going to the CEO for approval, and you may want to have it go to multiple people. You may want to have notifications and so forth. So you can add whatever you like in here for your situation. Okay, so that's, just in a nutshell what the workflow would look like in here. And of course, you'd want to save it when you're done with that. All right, now, another thing that may be involved in your compensation management would be if you're going to include the results of a performance review in the distribution, whether it's part of the increases or you just want to show that information to the performer. So you may recall a couple of weeks ago, if you joined us, that we did talk about how you set these up. I'm just going to very briefly go over what I did. As I set up one called annual comp review, and I assigned it to the manager, and it's distributed out for people to perform that review. So I'm not going to go into the full setup of this thing. We did that a couple of weeks ago, and you can certainly revisit that video. But if you want to use one in your review, in your compensation distribution, you need to set that up. Okay. Now you can only use one review for each round that you set up. So if you have different reviews for different departments or job titles or something like that, you will need to set up multiple distribution rounds to handle that situation. So let's talk about distribution rounds. Now, before I get into that, which is obviously the key to this, we do have a feature that we released, I believe it was in the last release, where you can have the system show a merit increase recommendation when they're performing the review, the compensation review. And if you would like to have the system show that to the user, then you'll want to set up this default merit scale. So let me just go over this very quickly here. What you would do, of course, when you first come in here, if you've never touched it before, it's going to be blank. So you click add. And it's going to look something like this, except for you're not going to have the ratings here because that's what you add. So you'll give it a name. And just like before, you may need to set one up for different departments or things like that. So I called it merit increase scale. And then you'll add these different levels. So you'll see here the settings in here. Now, when you do this, you want to do this in ascending order. So start with your lowest scale. In my situation, 0 to 50. There is no default increase percentage. So this is going to look at the score on a performance review. And let's say somebody got a 45%, it would recommend 0%. Now you can do whatever you like. That's what I chose to do in this setting, but you can do whatever you like. And of course, this means you're going to include 50%. So if they happen to get 50 on the dot, you want to include that in this, you can. Otherwise, what it'll do is it will not include this, and this will go to the next one. So like from 50 to 60, it would include 50 on the dot in the next one. That's what this checkbox is for. Okay, so you can see how I have these set up. And you'll notice why you do it in ascending orders, because it will fill in the gaps. So if I just did 100, it would say 0 to 100 is 12%, and I wouldn't have those other things in there. So you'd want to go your lowest first and then your next. So 0 to 50, 50 to 60, it is 2%, and you can see 60 or 70 is 3%, etc. So you can add these in here as you like. All right, so once you have that configured, of course, you would save this, and then you can now use it in your distribution round. Now, this is not a requirement. Just like the review period is not a requirement if you're not going to use it. Now, this won't work if you don't use a review period, because it needs to compare it to the results of a review. So let's look at this here. Now I have one already configured here because I started this for demo purposes here. So of course, this is by employer. You'll want to give it a name. So in my situation, 2024 comp review. The period, I'll show you what that means in a second here. This is what it shows the salary as on the comp management when somebody's actually performing this. So this would show their annual salary, and you have other options there if you want to show like the biweekly or the monthly or something like that. You could choose a different period if you want to show that rate. Here, the workflow, this is a requirement. So I had to choose this. That's why I had to set it up first. And then this is the date that they're going to start doing this. It doesn't mean they have to start on the first. It's just when it's going to open up. And this is the date that it's going to end. After this date, they cannot perform it anymore. And then this is the effective date. If they go through and they complete it and they submit it and it's approved, when it will go through and update everybody's rates to the new rates. So you'll see here, I've got July 1st to August 31st, and the effective date is September 1st. All right. Now, when you come into here, what's going to happen is that you're going to see your current salary budget. So it's going to go through everybody who is in the company. It's not necessarily the people who are going to be included in this particular round, because that's determined on the next one. But this is the entire company's budget. So 7.5 million in my situation here. I typed in $1 million here as the merit increase to be allocated, but I could also do a percentage. So if I wanted to say 10%, of course, it would do 750,000, et cetera, as that merit increase. So when I typed in $1 million, that was 13.3% of that right there. This is that scale I just talked about a couple of moments ago. If you would like to have a merit increase scale that you're going to use, you would select this here. And this is not a requirement, but I want to use it, so I'm going to put that right there. You'll see two checkboxes here. Are we allowed to go over this merit budget? So the merit budget is not just here, it's also in the managers. Are they allowed to go over the merit budget? Let's say I allocated $50,000 to some manager, and maybe everybody did a great job on the reviews, and they did all the recommendations and ended up being 60,000. If I want to allow that to happen, then we'll check this off. If I don't, they'll have to make some choices and figure out how to get to that $50,000 budget. Same type of thing with a bonus. If you are going to do bonuses on a review, you may want to allow them to go over the bonus budget. Now, if you don't do merit, when you're performing the compensation management, it won't show that on there, and you could just do bonuses. And if I choose not to do bonus, it won't show anything about bonus, and it will just do merit. You can do both, or you can do one or the other. I've chosen to do both just to show you what that would look like here. When you're doing the view of this in self-service, there are certain columns that are going to show, for example, the employee's name and their current salary. If you would like to show some other columns, you can do that. Let me show you what those are, because I'm going to add a new one here. Let's do that real quick here to show you. So these are the other columns you can do here. If you would like to show the person's last pay change date, their last increase amount or percentage, of course it could be a decrease, but the last change amount or percentage. If you're using salary grades, you may want to show the max and min for the salary grades, and then the performance review results. So if they got a 90% or whatever, you want to show that on there, you can. Of course, that would kind of play hand in hand with this merit increase scale. So if you use that, that's what that's for right there. All right, so back into the one that is here. Now, because I'm using the performance review and the merit scale, I do need to select which performance review period, and I've selected that one I just showed you briefly called annual comp review. So this is going to be a requirement because I'm using these. If I wasn't, I don't have to use this. These three fields are optional, but they kind of tie to each other. I can't show the performance review results without telling you which performance review to use. All right, and then in here, you can assign to one or more managers. I've selected 2 managers here. Of course, I could have selected any number of managers. You do tell it what org structure you're going to use when you refer to managers. So if you do have multiple org structures, some companies do like manager, supervisor, maybe there's a department head or something like that. So if you do have those, you have to select one. You can't, unfortunately, select like manager and supervisor and then have that mixture in there. You select one. In my situation, I selected the one called manager, and then I selected 2 managers. Now, when I do that, it's going to show me how many employees the person is managing. So Rebecca's got 8, Ted has 26. Here's their current salary budget. Again, based off of the number of employees there. That's really useful because then you can see, all right, if I allocated $1 million for each one, well, that's spread out over 8 people here versus 26 people here. So if you wanted to, make it even or something like that, you might say, all right, he should get like 3 or 4 times as much because he has more employees. That's what this is for here. The total budget or the total percentage are fields that you can edit. Just like on the previous screen where I could put in the amounts here, I could do either the amount or the percentage. The same thing happens here where I can put in the amount or the percentage for each manager. Okay. Now, you don't need to use the entire budget if you don't want to. So you'll see here's an example. I did 200,000 of the $1 million. So for whatever reason, maybe you look at all this stuff and it ends up being 985,000. It's not going to say you can't move forward because you haven't allocated the last 15,000. It'll allow you to do it just like I did here. Same thing with a bonus budget. You'll notice here, I've got $1 million, but I only allocated 125,000. You kind of see how that is showing there. And then because I typed in 50,000, that ends up being 5% of the total bonus budget. And then 75,000 is 7.5%. All right, now, if you're ready to have people start doing this button right here where it says save, you can also choose to submit. That will allow the round to start based on those dates on the previous screen. So in my situation, I started July 1st through August 31st. So when I submitted, it started it right away. But let's say I did it for next week. When I hit submit, it wouldn't actually start until it came up to the date that I chose. Let's say I chose the 18th. On the 18th, it would turn on and I would be able to start doing that. And notification would go out to the manager right here that they have to do it. All right, so let's look at them actually performing this. I'll go ahead and cancel this real quick. In self-service, this is where they're going to perform this. So you'll see over here, we have compensation distribution. Now, they will receive a notification. I happen to also initiate a bunch of performance reviews, so I see those in here. But they're somewhere in here. There'll be a notification about doing my compensation distribution round. So I get a notification on that. Anyway, so you'll see here is compensation distribution. And when I click on that, it's going to show this here. Now, it could be very useful to make this more full screen. I'm using kind of a smaller size to make it easier for you all to see. But I can make it a little bigger to kind of hide that little sidebar, if that makes it easier for the performer of this thing. Now, you'll see some people have a performance review score. I didn't go through and do every performance review. Those are the ones I've done so far. So I can see, for an example, Manuel, he got 94%. It's recommending 12%. Here's his current salary. So that's the recommendation. I haven't done anything as far as this is concerned. I can push this button, which will take this amount and boom, put it right there. So you'll see here, it did that automatically for me. It makes it very easy. I don't have to do that anymore. So I can have it do that. Now, of course, this is the manager's option to do this. They can override it if I said apply recommendation, but I just said he gets 15%. I could do that there. And of course, these people, they haven't had their performance review completed. If I go through and I can, do Andre and Russell and so forth, it will fill these in. So you probably want to do this after the performance reviews are done, not at the same time like I have. But, if you do happen to have them simultaneously and they're submitted and approved, I can see the results kind of as I'm going through the process. All right, so you can see how that's in there. Now, when I'm looking at this, of course, I can type in a percentage. Let's say I know I want to give Andre 9%. I could type that in instead of using this here. Or maybe for Russell, I want to give him 10,000. I could type in the number right there, and it'll calculate what that percentage is. All right, you'll see as I'm going along, it is showing me my allocation up here. And I did allow the manager to go over budget. So if I put in enough and it goes over budget here, let's just be really generous to Joseph and give him 50,000. It does let me go over the budget. If I did not enable that, what would happen is this would be highlighted in red and I would not be able to submit this change because they're over the budget. But I allowed it, so it's going to allow that to go over the budget there. Okay, same type of thing for the bonus. Now you'll notice there is no percentage for the bonus because we just didn't have one there. Most people do it as like an amount rather than a percentage of their salary. So you'll see here like that. Okay, so very simple to just go through there. And again, it's going to show those numbers up there. So I'll do 5,000 or whatever. It's going to show that. I'm not sure where it doesn't show 10,000. That's weird. Let me type that in again. I did hit enter. There we go. 16,000. And of course, it will keep adding up on those things. Now, you don't need to do both. You could leave one blank. So let's say with Sean, he doesn't get a bonus. He's going to get 15%, but no bonus. Oops, not 1%, 15. But no bonus. I can certainly do that. And same thing with Gerald. Maybe didn't do so well in his review, but we're still going to give him $2,000. So you can, make so they're not getting both. All right, and as I mentioned, is showing those up there. And you'll see here, of course, at the bottom, when I come all the way down to the bottom, I can save this. So if I'm not ready to finish this and I, had to run off to a meeting or, I'm waiting for all these other performance reviews to be approved, I can save my progress and then come back to this. And, when I come back there, it'll save all those things there. The other thing is that as an administrator, you can review where people are with their distribution round. So I can come in here and I can see, well, Rebecca hasn't done anything. And then here I can see, interesting, it says saved. I think I need to let our team know this. It's not showing those saved amounts, but it allows me to see the progress of these people. I do know when I've submitted it, it does show those in here so I can see the progress along the way. I have just the 2 managers, so it makes it very easy. Obviously, if you had more, you may need to hit this button to collapse it so you can just see like each manager's progress along the way. Okay, this button right here would stop the distribution around. So if I submitted it inadvertently and I wanted to go back and add a manager or something like that, I can hit recall. And you'll notice now it says it's not submitted. When I do that, it opens up a lot of the settings so I can change these things. Maybe I need to select a different manager or something like that. Let's just pick Rosemary and Albert here. I can add those people in here if I needed to. So I am able to make changes, but if I do that, it pulls it back from anybody who's already started on it. So be careful with that. But it could be useful if you accidentally submit it instead of just saving. So here you can see how I could do like this and maybe use 12%, something like that. So you can see how I can put the numbers in if I want to type those in just like that. All right, and then save this. And of course, when I'm ready to launch it, I can submit. That locks it in place again. And now when I come back here and refresh, I'll see that out there. Okay, now because I recalled it, I lost everything. So just be aware of that. If people have started on that and I recall it for whatever reason, they're going to lose their work in progress because we basically started it over. You won't be able to recall it if somebody's submitted or, of course, if it's already been approved. So you won't be able to do that. But if I do need to make a change, maybe I put the wrong dates and somebody hasn't started or something like that, I'm okay with that. All right. So like I said, when this is done here, the manager, whoever's performing this, is going to submit this, and then it's going to follow that workflow that I just had out there for approval. So in my situation, it would go to the CEO, and then it would update the employees with an effective date of 9/1. So you can see how kind of that all works there. All right, I see there have been some questions out there, so do want to look at those. So when selecting managers, does the security apply so managers can only see the direct reports? Yes. So some of these people do have stub reports, and I don't see them on here on this thing. So I can't see, let's say Manuel had a sub, he doesn't, but I know Nate in my situation does have some subs. I don't see them on here. I only see the people that are one level down. Okay, so that's how that works there. And just so I can be clear on the manager setting, some people get confused with that because they don't call it manager, they call it something else. It's this org structure right here on the employment information screen. You can have up to 4 fields here. They can be called anything you like. It's in the code table. I'll show you that in a second. But they can be called anything you like. I happen to have called mine manager. And so that's the terminology I'm using. You might use it as supervisor or reports to or something along those lines, just to clarify where that's at in case you don't know, because there's a lot of settings, obviously. But in your code tables under user, you will see the org structure. And you'll see mine is called manager. So in this org structure 1, of course, I can have 2, 3, or 4. And I might call it supervisor or something like that. So that's where my terminology of manager comes in. And certainly I know that there are many clients who use manager and supervisor, or maybe they do like time off approver as one of these or something like that. So just that's where this is coming from if you're ever curious on that one there. Let's see. Is there 2 questions here? Is there configuration required or enabled to income codes with respect to merit and bonuses so that we can control the GL mapping? So with the merit increase, what it's going to do is simply change the person's salary. So, they're going to come in, it's going to come in here. And let's say I gave Chris, he's 35 hours. Let's say he went to 40 hourly. It would change this. And of course, it will put a record in the position history and stuff like that. So it's just going to use this pay rate. And then, of course, whatever is the code you use for hourly pay, it's going to use that. So it's not going to be a separate amount for that increase. I'm not going to see $35 under regular and $5 under merit or something like that. It's just going to update the pay rate. For the bonus, it's been a little while since I've gone through. I think you get a choice of what code to use. So if you have several codes, maybe you've got one called holiday bonus, another one called annual bonus or something like that, you would use that one there. And let me just see here, once workflow is completed. Yes, the rates do automatically updates into the system here. So they will go to this screen. Now the bonus doesn't get saved here because there's no place for the bonus. We don't have a certain field to save the bonus. You would have to go back to the distribution round to see the bonus. But the merit increase does go and update the record there. So when I excuse me, when I go back here and I hit the little eyeball, I would be able to see the bonuses if you needed it for reporting purposes or something like that. Now this will show the delta or the change. It doesn't show, like, let's say I gave this person 10,000. It's not going to show 90,000 on this. It'll show that he got a $10,000 increase, but his employment record will now show 90,000. Hopefully that makes sense there. All right, so that is the distribution rounds and stuff like that. Hopefully you'll find that very useful there. Of course, there are other ways to do comp management. You can, of course, individually go through, like I just showed you, and go to an employee and give them a change. We're specifically talking about, the using the distribution rounds, but, part of comp management might be just giving somebody an increase. So if you're not aware of how that works on their primary position screen, I can click new action, select the pay date that's effective, and give them an increase. So whatever the reasons are, again, these are in your code table. Let's say there's a merit increase and I want to change it to $20 an hour. This is in essence, a comp management. One of the things that is available now that was added in the last version, you can generate an offer letter from this. So you can, of course, submit it, and you may have a workflow for approving changes, but that's how I can do it on an individual. And then I did want to point out that if you would like, some people like to use spreadsheets for this. And so we do have a template that you can use for pay changes. You'll see here under System Configuration Data Import, module number 9 allows you to do pay rate revisions. And I'm going to show you this because this is actually pretty useful out here, because the system is great for doing this, but some people, they like spreadsheets, and that's okay. We want to be able to support everybody that uses those types of things. So this is what the pay rate revision spreadsheet will look like if you ever export it out. It looks like this. I think this is showing my spreadsheet. So here you'll see it exported out a list of all of my employees. These are all my active employees. So you may want to, break this up into different sheets for different managers or something like that. And so here's all their current information, including their current pay rates. And then I can come over here in the yellow columns and I can give somebody an increase. So I may want to say annually, which is Y for year, his new rate is going to be 105,000. And then if there's a salary grade, I can apply that in that situation. So I can do these. The salary grade is not a requirement, but the pay rate would be, because of course you're giving a change. All right, so you would just go through and, change this, maybe deleting other people and so forth. So you can easily go through this. I'm just going to go through real quick and remove everybody else to show you how this import will work. So of course you don't need to leave people there if they're not going to get an increase or a change. And it doesn't need to be an increase, it can be a decrease. But you'll see here, Frederick Bailey, he's going to 105. Let me save this and switch back. Okay, so you'll see here the action does need to show import there for me to import it. That kind of makes sense, but some people, they skip that because it doesn't autofill this. And let me go to my downloads here real quickly and import this here. Okay, so that's the file I just updated. Here you'll see what is the reason. So when you're doing this, you are telling the system what's the reason. Now this is going to apply to everybody in the spreadsheet. So if there was a different reason for every person, then you would have to break it up in this situation. Okay, what's the effective date? So maybe it's going to be August 1st or something like that. I can put in a different effective date. I'm just going to go back to Monday, but I can do that. And then I would hit import. And of course, this is important. There's no errors. So sometimes what might happen is if you hand this out to managers, maybe they add columns and delete stuff and you don't notice it and they move something, that might cause errors there. So if you know Excel, there's certain ways to lock things down. You may want to do that. To do that, or you send them a spreadsheet and then you merge it all together into your template. And so I'll import that in there. And now if I go to Frederick and I go to his position, there you'll see the 105 merit increase effective 7/8. And of course, in his position history, I'll see the old information. He was at 100 for that period. So that's another way to do that. If you would like to do that, I'd like to show all 3 ways. There unfortunately is not like a mass change, something in here outside of the merit increase distribution route. So I can't do like a mass change without using the templates or having the manager do it. Okay, so I think that's all the questions I saw out there. Thank you, Lacey, for your feedback on that. You've found it very helpful to use those before, and I personally found it very helpful as well. I've helped many clients do it that way. So thank you for all your feedback, all your questions on that. I do want to bring up my slideshow here real quick. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot to announce as far as what's coming up here. My I don't know where my little window went here for to be able to see this. So upcoming learning series webinar. It's not that we're not going to do it after August 1st. So we are taking a little break because I have a vacation in 2 weeks. So we're going to go Thursday, August 1st. We're going to go through actually doing the performance reviews and self-service. Last time, a couple weeks ago, we set them up, but I didn't get a chance to perform them and show you how that works. So we're going to cover that. Should be a pretty straightforward one. Probably get it done, early instead of going a little bit longer. And then we're going to announce the rest of our calendar. We did have something else on here, but just got a little delay. So hopefully we're able to make that announcement again in August or sometime before then. We do have a upcoming product release coming up as well. So in about 2 weeks, we're going to be coming out with our 2 release, and we got a lot of exciting new features in there. We'll have an announcement for the webinar date and time coming out shortly. And so if I don't see you on August 1st, hopefully I do see you in a couple of weeks. As always, if you have any questions, of course, you can reach out to support. You'll see help at CriterionHCM.com. If you're working with a partner, of course, you can reach out to them and they can help you as well. So thank you for joining us today. I do appreciate it and hope you have a wonderful day.